Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Sherri Horner, your host at Health Fitness Broadcast, bringing you the hottest fitness topics and latest health issues. Today, exercise strength and conditioning coach and exercise physiologist Karsten Jensen joins us again from Ontario, Canada. Welcome back to the show, Karsten.
Thank you, Sherri. Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you back. It's been a few years, around 4 years, I think, since we talked. And we
Yes.
talked about the periodization method but we're going to talk about it today and maybe go a little deeper too. So that's our topic
Mhm.
for today. Let's just start out with answering explain to everyone what is the periodization method.
Periodization in and of itself is a word similar to categorization or classification. So where categorization making means to take things and put it into categories, periodization means taking a longer period and dividing it into periods. That's the definition in the dictionary. And if you take that into training, it means to take a longer period of training, in technical terms called the macrocycle, and dividing it into shorter periods, in technical terms called the mesocycles. And then the accumulated training effect that is achieved in each mesocycle, then they will result in the person reaching his goal at the end of the macrocycle when those sequence of cycles are correctly designed. And the principles of correctly designing those mesocycles, that would be a method of periodization. Because the other side of that is that you hardly can avoid using periodization, because the definition in and of itself means different periods with different goals, structures, and contents of the training program. So any one of the listeners, if they have ever changed anything about their training program, like a new exercise, a new tempo, a new volume, anything, they have applied periodization, because then it's a new period, at least with new content of the training. The difference between systematic periodization, like a method, as you say, and what someone might do on their own if they don't have any training, is how effective it is.
Okay, now, we're talking long-term goal. So we're talking
Yes.
um, not always professional athletes, although you've worked with a lot of professional athletes in
Yeah.
13 different sports. So you have knowledge in all of those areas.
That has
And
grown since we last spoke. It's 26 now.
oh, 26. Oh, yeah, it's been
Yeah.
4 years. Yeah. So you're
Yes.
always
Thank you.
progressing. You're always helping more people and more
Yeah.
athletes. So the periodization is for a long-term goal. Well,
Yeah.
that would be for not only athletes, but it would be beneficial for someone needing to lose 50 to 100 pounds. They could apply that.
Absolutely. And it has, depending on what your goal is and how far away you are from the goal. Sometimes, in order to train optimally for what you really want, so to speak, you have to develop something else first. In the same sense that in order to build a wonderful house, you have to create a really solid foundation. So I can give you an example. If someone wants to lose weight, as you say, and they really like to run, the best way to lose weight by running is to run intervals. Scientific studies show that. But if you're overweight and you're not used to running, even if you could run intervals, you would get injured. And that means in order to be able to run intervals, you have to develop a range of factors first, including you have to lose some weight, so you're not hugely overweight. You have to develop endurance in your stabilizer muscles, the muscles that stabilizes the foot, the knee and the hip, and the core when you're on one leg. And you have to develop running technique. So you do that through strength exercises, through running at lower velocities. If you're really overweight, you'd have to start walk first. So overall, in many cases, there's a sequence of developing the different factors that all tie into what you really want in the end.
Okay.
And
And
that's almost regardless of what your goal is. I can give you a an opposite side of the spectrum where periodization is not necessary.
yeah.
I have a a grandfather. He's not my biological grandfather, but he's my emotional grandfather. He's 96, and he does joint mobility exercises every day in order just to be able to keep moving. So that does not require periodization, but he's just keeping himself going.
Right.
But for anyone who have any, you can say, any goal that requires a significant change in their physiology one way or the other, almost always periodization should be applied.
Okay. And you train trainers. You're the trainer to the trainers, and
Yes.
you have probably trained thousands and thousands by now, because you've been in the industry for how many years now?
I started my exercise physiology education in '91, and I had my first strength coach job in '93.
Okay,
So that's 21 years.
you've trained a lot. So
Yes, yeah.
But the individual can also do this on their own. But it would be wise to contact Karsten, and he's not saying this, I am. It would be wise to contact him, and I'm going to have his information in the description box. So if you have further questions, if you are a trainer and you want to be trained in this, you can contact him. If you're an individual athlete, you can be trained in this. And he has trained Olympic athletes, world-class athletes, and so he definitely, you know what you're doing.
Yes.
The proof is there. But with the periodization, I have another
I
question.
think can I add a little bit to what you're saying there, Sherri?
Yes, yes.
So briefly, if a listener is a trainer, our website has a lot of information of what we offer. If a listener is like an individual athlete, we have, and don't live in Ontario, we have a distance training, which the person can read about on our website. It does require that the person is advanced, so that I can trust that the technique, when the person trains on his own or her own, will be good. Lastly, one thing a listener could do is he or she could ask his or her potential trainer about, how do you create my long-term program? What method of periodization are you applying, or in any way that they're comfortable with? Ask the trainer what they know about how to progress them over time.
Okay, good point. So there's information on your website for either or.
Yes.
And
yes.
And then before we go further, I just want to mention you have 11 different workshops that are at conferences in Canada, but also you have home study courses. Some of them are home study courses and online, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, great.
We filmed many of our workshops, and they're available through our website for download.
Okay, good. So we're going to have that information below, and you can click on that if you want to contact him or learn more about the training. So back to the periodization, how important is it to reach your goal to do that? I mean, can't people just change things up, here and there? I mean, how important is it to have that system to reach your goal? I mean, it works, obviously. That's why we're talking
things
about
up. That's the key words that should raise red flags. When now I can't walk around, but I mentioned that phrase in my periodization workshops. And what I do when I say that phrase is that I'll walk 2 steps in one direction, then I'll turn around and walk back to where I started. Or 2 steps in another direction and turn back and to where I started. And that's what you risk when you change things up, is that you end up essentially having done a lot of training. But if what you are doing does not build upon what you previously did, then you risk going nowhere, literally.
Okay, I like that. That's a good demonstration. Yeah, that you're back to where you started. Let's talk about holistic programming. What that means, why that's important.
Yeah. So holistic programming means 2 things. It means taking into account all the factors that can affect the outcome of the training. That's one thing. And the other thing is it means to consider that the human being are spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical beings. I can give you an example. I spoke with a baseball player yesterday in the gym that I trained. We just spoke after my session. I'm not training him or anything. And he he did hip mobility work, and I looked at what he was doing, and I could see he was straining. And we talked about how his hips always gets tight. And he has been stretching every day for years. He's 41. He sees an osteopath on a regular basis. He plays baseball twice a week. And one of the really good ways of thinking, and I would like to credit Paul Check here, who's the first time he brought that way of thinking into life for me. He said in a seminar that prescribing an aspirin for a headache is like saying a headache is an aspirin deficiency, which is, when you say it like that, it obviously doesn't make sense. Into stretching, if someone stretches every day for a very long period of time and they're still tight, that tightness is not because of lack of stretching. There's something else driving it. And when the trainer realizes that, then you want to find out what drives it. And then I, for example, one of the things, and this is like a pattern that have come up a lot. So I asked him, are you very explosive? Yes, he said, I don't train for 100 meter, and they just tested me a couple of months ago. He ran a sub 11. That's very fast for someone who doesn't train it. And I said, do you do a lot of stabilizer work? Yeah, sometimes, but I've tended to neglect it. And say, when does the tightness most appear? When you during the season or out of season? It comes mostly during the season, he said. All right, what is probably your issue is that you are, which some athletes do, you might have heard this before, they're ripping themselves apart. They're so explosive that without training, they can run really, really fast, jump very, very high. And they're big, large muscles, the muscles that are designed to create the movement, they're much stronger than the smaller muscles that are deeper or closer to the joint, that has the job of keeping the joint centered. So for someone like that, if I were to train someone like that, instead of, even though baseball requires sprinting, this guy doesn't need sprint training, because without training, he's already fast enough. What he needs is stabilizer training, so that when he sprints, he doesn't get injured. And that's an example of the holistic approach.
Great.
Which I find is very, very successful, because it really identifies what is the weak link for an individual athlete.
And that's the key, the weak link. When we talked a few years ago, you gave an example of someone that plays volleyball. They don't need a lot of jump training. They have that. They need to focus on the shoulders.
Yeah.
To prevent shoulder injury.
It's the same thing. It's giving the athlete what the athlete needs. I sometimes say that I don't care what the program looked like or what you're doing, as long as we both agree on that that's what will help you towards a goal that you've stated.
Right.
So I don't have like pet exercises. One of the biggest mistakes a trainer can make is to have favorite exercises. You know, for example, some trainers will say that almost before starting thinking of the program, they will put things like power cleans or power snatches in it. If you are a power lifter, you will think that everybody should do squat, bench press, and deadlifts. If you have a gymnastic background, you'll think everybody should do pull-ups, which essentially is a programming mistake, at least in my viewpoint.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So when people are looking for a trainer, ask, do you have a favorite exercise, and see what the answer is before you hire that trainer.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
They
should hesitate if someone asks them that. They shouldn't be able to answer it.
Yeah, that's a good tip. So with your seminars, is there any more information you can give us? They can go to the website and get all the information. So you have 11 now, some online, some at conferences, and next year you're going to have even more, right? Is that on the agenda?
They all tie into periodization. So they all teach various aspects of the flexible periodization method, which is our way to teach through individualized training programs how to manifest untapped potential for anyone, for strength, speed, power, and endurance. So that's really the theme, the core word. Anyone who goes to Yes Strength, they can see that the key word with very large font that kind of jumps in your face when you open the website is periodization, which we also have been speaking about here.
Yeah, and I want to mention your book. He is the author of the flexible periodization method, and that's
Yes,
available too on your website, or there will be a link
absolutely.
there. Yeah, for that.
Yeah,
So,
under resources,
okay. All right, that's good.
download electronic download as well as paperback.
Okay, nice, nice. That's good.
Yeah.
So, any other information about this periodization? Any other tidbits or tips?
It is it can be done very simply in the sense that if someone trains and stay with the same program for a while, they will find that initially they're making good gains, and then after a while they may become stale, which is sometimes called monotonous overtraining, or they might start to become sore or having nagging overuse injuries, which is actual overwork and overstress. And that's the time to take some days off, maybe a lighter week, and then change something about the training. And obviously, if the person works with a certified trainer, that trainer will have a system for making that change, and they will have hopefully a lot of exercises to choose from. If you're just on your own, you may not have a system for making that change. But if you are considering a change, you can try and ask yourself, and then just go with your gut feeling. Is this change I'm making moving me forward towards my overall goal?
Right. That's a good.
And sometimes if you really think about that, you could, at least someone who trains themselves, they might realize, okay, this exercise is not going to help towards that at all. And in that view, what is really important is the principle of specificity. If you want to get better at something, you have to train it. There's no magic exercise transfers. It's only transfer between an exercise and another movement to the extent that there's similarity in the recruitment pattern or identicalness, which is why I don't know if anybody's into kettlebells. They might have heard of what the hell effect, where people who are into kettlebells, they will say, oh, I lifted kettlebells and then I got better at something else. And they will kind of say, what the hell? And this is actually this is a great disservice in my mind, because they leave the transfer as something magical, meaning it can't be reproduced. In order to understand transfer and reproduce it, you have to understand the mechanism of the transfer, and that is identicalness, overload, and newness.
Okay, good tips. Good
Yeah.
tips. I want to thank you for sharing all your information and providing us with your website. And again, it'll be in the link below. Thanks again for coming back to the show. But before we go, I want to ask you to show me your favorite shoe.
My favorite shoe is a Vibram 5-finger shoe, which I use for lifting. And I've used it for lifting for, I think, 8 or 9 years. And the reason I started lifting in it, because I have a very wide foot. So in regular, I used actually Chinese badminton shoes. They're similar in style as Chuck Taylor Converse. So they're very flat, but they were too narrow for my foot, and my toes were crammed together. About that time, I learned about the tip of grabbing the floor with the toes when you're doing standing lifts like squatting and deadlifts. And I anticipated that would be much easier in these shoes. And this is why I started using them. I also do Olympic style lifting, and when I do that, I don't use these shoes. I use Olympic style weightlifting shoes.
Yeah. Cool.
Other than that, I really like them.
Those. Yeah, I like those. Well, my
Yeah.
shoe for today is
Yeah.
Skechers. And I used to love Skechers, and I got away from them, but I put these on, and the inside is like foam, and they just said, I love you to my feet, and my feet said, I love
Yes.
you back. And I love the design, and most of all, it came with an extra pair of laces, so I can always change them out, and they match. So that's really cool. So
They
yeah,
look very cool. So they're very nice and soft to walk in.
yes, it's
Yeah.
like it's like walking on foam. It's like they're so great. So I have many shoes, and this is my newest favorite. So and then the bottom, check it out.
Very cool.
Love it, love it. So
They look very comfortable.
Skechers came out with a winner, so love that one. But I want to say
Yeah.
thank you again, and I look forward to you coming back. I hope you come back in the future and share some more with us.
Absolutely, Sherri.
And I appreciate everything you do. And I want to encourage everyone to check you out. Your website is?
Yes to Strength. So YESTOSTRENGTH. Yes to Strength.com.
Okay, and I'll have the link below. But thank you so much for your time. I look forward to speaking with you again, Karsten.
Thank you for having me on the show. My
Thank you.
pleasure.